Hi, I'm Skye, and today I'll be discussing how food and places are interconnected in the Bronze Age and the Neolithic. I'll be mostly focusing on a site called Runneymede and how there may or may not be feasting there. Yes, and by the way, Runneymede is an archaeological site found in Egham, which you can look up if you want, but I'll be showing maps, talking about it later. Also, warning, butchery will be described in this talk, and animal bones will also be shown. So yes, proceed if you want to. The title, and that's stunning if you want to look it up. Okay, so I'll be introducing the Neolithic, which occurred from 4000 to 2200 Cal BCE. It's when people started to farm and settle down, and they didn't lead such sedentary lives. And they also started building these amazing monuments, as you can see from Woodhenge. This is a Woodhenge called Dorrington Walls, which is not far from Stonehenge, which was actually another site of where they found lots of animal bones, basically, which indicates that there were large amounts of animal bones, which indicate that they were feasting there. Yes, and then, but also there was the Bronze Age, which is around 2600 to 700 Cal BCE, when people started working with bronze and settlements started to grow in size, and they were still building monuments also. But so feasting, there was a social activity during the Neolithic and Bronze Age, where lots and lots of people would gather together to celebrate life events such as births, marriages, deaths, even, I guess, even also, but also agricultural events, so like harvesting or the birth of animals and stuff like that. And they would celebrate this by eating large quantities of meat, which they'd usually roast over a fire or something like that. These feasting events would usually occur at ceremonial monuments, like causewayed enclosures, which are also called causewayed camps, which were basically not that similar. So like concentric rings of mounds and ditches, where people would occasionally come to, and the dead were also buried there also. So this whole idea of tying the ancestors to the land, but also having a physical tie to the land through the dead and symbolism, and this would have been all interconnected into their religion also. So literally everything is just connected together. But also it occurs at long barrows, which are rectangular mounds where they also buried lots of the dead. So this whole like tying all stages of life and death together, and eating lots of food, obviously. Feasting did not just occur in Britain, it occurred literally all over Europe and even further afield. So I put another example of feasting from northern Greece, at Makarios, the site Makarios 1. But it was also happening in Poland, in Turkey, literally just all over where you'd get where there was farming, there was most likely feasting. But they also believe that even earlier, when before the Neolithic, there were also feasting. So it's kind of something that running trend during prehistory. I wanted to show that if you ever want to find like any sort of like monuments or anything like that, like Runneymede basically, you can look on the ancient monuments, where they basically put all the scheduled monuments, so it says where it is and stuff like that, and it gives a map so you can find it, and then it kind of gives you coordinates and like all sorts of details, which means that you can literally just look up any sort of monument and find it. And then what I'm going to show you also, which I'm sure you'd know anyway, is that you could explore it through Google Earth. So this is actually where the site is. You can't really see much because it was only like excavated in like the 1980s. So basically they put back all the backfill and stuff and the topsoil. which is basically all the things on the top, the modern dirt layers basically, and it's basically grown over. So the site Runnymede was excavated because actually lots of rescue archaeology occurred here because they were building the M25, which you can see from here, the bridge. So they had to quickly excavate that because basically like legislation and stuff like that. It means that before you build anything over, like, I don't know, parking lots or roads or anything, you need, there's a law saying that you need to look to see whether there's any evidence, archaeological evidence of anything significant. So they had to do that, but they also did, so this was the rescue kind of archaeology section, which I'll show a map also later. But actually they didn't get that many finds because they have to work pretty quickly. But later on, the British Museum did some excavations, some research excavations, and that's where they found like loads and loads of animal bones, which they think might indicate feasting. So I'll just stop sharing, but I think it's kind of cool. Like, obviously, like, there's better sites out there that you could do that. I'd also suggest like checking out, if you ever find it interesting, there's this thing called Sketchfab, where it has 3D reconstructions of sites. And that's really cool. Okay, so that is the map that I was going to show you, which they showed. So that's where the rescue archaeology is. That's research excavations. So this is the research excavations where they found, literally, as I said before, all the animal bones, which were a lot actually. And this site dates to the Neolithic and Late Bronze Age. So around the dates that I previously mentioned, they found bits of pottery, a bit of metalwork, large quantities of animals, 87,000 bone fragments. That's how many they found. That's insane. Which is why they thought, you know, this is really clearly, maybe they ate a lot, which indicative of feasting. However, the carbon 14 dates suggest that the site was occupied for 500 years. So they think, oh, maybe not actually, maybe it might just be accumulation of bones over 500 years. So the animal bones, I just figured that I might as well explain how the animal bones were excavated. So they were hand excavated by trowel, as I've put pictures down there, and really carefully. You don't really want to kind of like, because some bones are kind of really fragile because of the soil, but I think they had really good soil preservation there because of like the clay sediments. So yeah. And then after it was excavated, they also took samples were taken. So we literally just take large chunks of mud and you put them in like sample bags, and then you sieve them, which is there's an example of an archaeologist sieving. Well, it doesn't have to be man, woman, whatever. Sieving and finding the finds. So they kind of like lay on top of the sieve. However, this is a picture from Australia, so like it would not be that dusty here. It would be like really muddy, and you wouldn't expect like lots of dust unless it was really hot. But even then, once you get kind of quite low down, it wouldn't basically be more like muddy sludge. And they were sieved through a 2 millimeter mesh. And the bones and the records are currently stored at the British Museum, which was who headed the research excavations anyway. So yes, these are the main animals which basically the animal bones kind of like belonged to. So pig, cattle, and sheep. The below one is actually an artistic reconstruction of a Neolithic sheep. The top one are modern, but I thought, you know, they're just pretty pictures, and like it's kind of nice to see what they can look like. Not what they kind of look like, but what animals were there. So mostly pig, cattle, and sheep were consumed there. There's not very much evidence of wild animals. There's no like evidence of like fish or like wild birds or anything, which is a bit strange. Because you think that like they'd like kind of hunt and then farm, but clearly not. Clearly they were just eating what they farmed, or it could just be due to the ground preservation, and because like they're obviously like fish bones and stuff like that are really thin and they don't preserve very well. However, usually it's the fact is that if a large animal like a cow and a pig were like slaughtered and killed, it would feed quite a lot of people. So I brought some bones to kind of like demonstrate that. Okay, so this is part of a cattle humerus, I think. And I'll just put it together. It's like in 2 pieces, but just to show like how much, like how big, because I think I tend to forget just how big kind of creatures are, you know. Oh God, that's not that. Okay, with me struggling, sorry. Okay, I don't want to destroy this bone. This would fit on like this. Sorry, that took me a while. Like it's huge. Imagine how much meat you can get from this, honestly. So yes, so that's 1 leg. So if you imagine a whole animal, that would feed a lot of people. And that's why I think if they find like a complete bones like this, they're like, oh, they probably were feasting or eating large chunks. And the reason why they think that is you think, oh no, you know, they'd be able to preserve the meat afterwards, you know? No, they wouldn't be able to do that because salt, which is one of the preservation methods, was only widely available in the late Bronze Age. And also, apparently smoking large chunks of meat, which that would produce, obviously, in damp conditions like England, is really hard. So they would have eaten it all at once. So if the bones are mostly complete, it's often signs of feasting or the fact they filtered from the bone. If the bones are chopped into little pieces, it indicates that they were using it as a stock to make like soups and stews, and they kind of hypothesized they'd probably use like barley and cereals with lots of veg, and that would be like everyday food for a Neolithic person. Dogs were also present on the site, as indicated by gnawing on bones. They also found, I think, some skeletal remains from dogs. They hadn't been butchered, which indicates that just like today, dogs were like a taboo food. You don't eat them, clearly. I mean, in some places they do, but clearly not at Runneymede. However, the evidence suggests that most of the limb bones were actually fragmented. So there it comes to the question, are they just eating lots of soups and not actually feasting that much? However, there is the argument that what could have happened is they could have had feasts and then they could have used the bones after to like minimize food waste, because they're quite good like that. And then that if they chopped up the bones for soups afterwards, you wouldn't be able to tell whether they'd been feasting or not. There's also the whole thing of marrow extraction. That was apparently a delicacy in the Neolithic times. Okay, so this is like the marrow, and like the middle part. I mean, I'm sure as you know, but I just thought kind of cool to show, you know. And basically the reason why they think they're doing marrow extraction, which actually some academics suggest that is evidence for small feasts, is that they found basically the shaft of the bone, this part of like long bones and stuff like that. So they'd heat up the shaft in the fire, and that would make it more easily to cut through. That would obviously that would weaken the bones and make it easier to chop and extract the bone marrow. Apparently, you know, Darrington walls, like the wooden henge that I showed earlier on, they basically ate marrow also. They seem to like it very much in the Neolithic. Overall, it seems people were mostly eating at Runneymede soups and stews because of the large amount of fragmentary bones. And dairy products, which they found lipids from just like fats were kind of incorporated into the pottery that they found, which kind of indicates they were heating up milk. And this is interspersed with occasional feasting, so maybe like small feasts, and for like special occasions, for like births and marriages and just happy times, you know, when they come. They're most likely to eat pork because they found a lot of pork bones, which is unusual for a Neolithic site in the south of England, actually, because usually you'd find like cattle, because cattle produce way more meat anyway.